episode of Breakthrough Innovation. With us today is David J., the founder and CTO of Modestack, and a seasoned technologist, innovator, and thought leader with over 18 years of experience in software development, enterprise architecture, project management, and AI. As the founder of the AI Innovators community and a thought leader on breakthrough innovation, something we care a lot about here, David is passionate about exploring the vast potential of AI and empowering polymaths and generalists to shape the future. David's expertise spans mobile strategies, enterprise software, and process optimization, making him a trusted consultant for driving innovation and operational excellence. He's also a prolific content creator, sharing insights on YouTube and Substack to inspire the next generation of innovators. Join us as we dive into his journey, his perspective on breakthrough innovation, and his vision for an AI-driven future. David, thank you for being here. I think there's going to be a lot of synergy between our areas of interest, and we're really thrilled to have you on the show.
Hey, love the podcast name, and JL, thank you for having me.
No problem at all. So we always start in roughly the same place. Can you give us a little background, who you are, where you come from, and what got you to this moment in time?
Yeah, so primarily I started my career as a Java developer, software developer, did a lot of projects in Java. I quickly realized I ask a lot of questions, especially the why question. Why are we doing this? And given that, I noticed, most managers, I'm not saying every manager, but most managers like developers to write code. Keep your heads down and write code. Exactly. How much code have we shipped, and what's kind of the GitHub commits that we are seeing coming through, right? So I quickly realized that I'm sort of, even though my background is technology, I quickly realized I sort of have to move up the value chain. So I started my own agency, mobile app development agency, that kind of ran its course. It was more, I also realized running an agency is more about customer management and managing expectations around customer relationship. Not that I'm against it. It's just that it's not my personality. So you quickly find out more about yourself. I'm talking about my career progression. So now the latest version of me, which is the last 10 years, has been more an advisory and a co-founder type role. And that's kind of where I am at in my career journey.
Oh, I love that. And I think it's really important that we treat our life a little bit like our work in terms of innovation, where we try things, we fail in small ways, learn from that, and do better. So I love that
100%.
idea of continuous reinvention of ourselves.
Yeah, I'm a big believer on that. Like, I talk a lot about self-mastery. To me, that is precisely that kind of creating. It's not necessarily the better version, the best version you can be of yourself at that moment, in that moment of time. So I always talk about decades. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and I think it's important to say that moment in time, because the best version of you right now is not the best version of you 10 days 100%. In the future or a year in the past. And it's a good way to cut yourself some slack to realize your best version isn't always the same.
That's right.
So David, to dive into things, I don't know how we could start anywhere else other than your videos on your approach to breakthrough innovation, given the topic of this podcast. So I'm curious, what inspired you to start down that content creation journey? And what are the things you've learned that have shifted or influenced your perspective on innovation?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of started the content creation journey more. I'm a writer by nature. I like to journal. In the mornings, I have my coffee. That's the first thing I do. I don't check emails. I don't do anything. Like, have the saying, don't let emails and messages dictate your day, right? So you want to start with the day with your intentions for the day, which is what journaling helps me do. That sort of a process of approaching it with, I kind of thought about it as content. I am writing my own content. And that's sort of like what led me to, number one, create the YouTube channel and my Substack, which is the latest version of it. Also, I have a LinkedIn newsletter. So 3 things that I'm very prolific writing as well as content, YouTube content creation. It's sort of like, going back to your question, it's my own learning, what works, what doesn't, what I have seen, what I have observed, So it's sort of like my own interpretation of the world. So I'm big on interpretation of the world and how that kind of creates unique experiences and unique innovation even. So
Right.
that's what led me to create content.
I love that. And it's always fun to focus on that, those different perspectives. I always relate it back to like when you're watching a football game with your buddy and you see the flag get thrown. And obviously, there was no penalty on my team,
Right.
right? But he sees it differently. That perspective, that context matters a whole lot.
Yes.
Ah, so I love that. Now, as you dove into this concept of breakthrough innovation,
Mhm.
I think a lot of people look at innovation in a very incremental way.
Yeah.
So like I'm slowly incrementing over time and
Yeah.
innovating over time. When you look at that compared to breakthrough innovation, what are the differences there? Like, how do you know this is a breakthrough innovation? And how do you kind of skip some of those incremental advances? And what can leaders do to identify those opportunities?
Yeah, it's a big question. Lots of things to unpack there.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the types of innovation there. Perhaps maybe we start there, right? Categories are very helpful, right? It helps us understand the world that we live in. Otherwise, we have multitude of things, and it's very hard for us to make sense of it. So I categorize innovation to three buckets. The first one is sort of like the incremental innovation that you talked about, the continuous improvements and the constant adjustments that we make. The second one is what I call disruptive innovation. It was popularized by this professor Clayton Christensen, who's written a series of books, right?
Yeah. Jobs to be
So
done books, right?
that's right, JBTD.
Yeah.
With that, let's kind of quickly talk about what type of innovation that is, right? It's about like how smaller companies can move fast and expand their product lines, create immediate value and disrupt bigger players in the industry. So that's what disruptive innovation is all about, right? And there's a third type of innovation which you and I talk about, which is the breakthrough innovation. What is fascinating to me is this doesn't happen historically very often. We've kind of, I'm a big reader of philosophy. Immanuel Kant, the philosopher of enlightenment, talks about it like in terms of like how Copernicus turned things around in terms of like, hey, this, everything is revolving around the earth versus we are actually revolving around the sun, so to speak, right? And that's
Yeah.
sort of like a breakthrough moment where the whole worldview changes. We can talk about that from in quantum Newtonian versus quantum physics. We can also talk about the advent of internet. We can talk about, the latest version of that is AI. So it really is going to change our worldview and how we view things. It just fundamentally changes everything. And that to me is what I categorize as breakthrough innovation.
Those
What
moments
are
when the
your thoughts?
paradigm shifts.
Yes, that's it. And it comes from the book, The Theory of Scientific Revolutions by Thomas Kuhn, who created that paradigm shift. Like we bastardize and commercialize that word. Everybody thinks that but
Right.
truly that book is a kind of like historical piece of work
Yeah.
of art.
Well, and it's interesting. Like I love the categories and this idea that you're in that breakthrough space when you're dealing with the paradigms at that point. You're not
Yeah.
dealing with things. You're not dealing with, small tweaks of what already exists. You're actually looking at the paradigms. What is it that really, what is it that leaders can do to help their organization focus more in that area? Because it's such a
Yeah,
lure to go to that incremental because it feels safe.
right.
But so how can leaders help make that shift?
Yeah, I think the way I look at it is sort of like I think incremental innovation has been popularized with the lean startup methodology.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
Sort of like, hey, continuously create value, continuously move the needle on what the customer wants, which are good things. I think everybody should do that. Like, in fact, I do that even in my own personal life.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that's good thing. But I think when we talk about breakthroughs, number one, we need to sort of move away from what I call an optimization mindset to a more value creation mindset. And that to me is fundamentally looking at what is happening around us in the, where we are in the history of time, what is happening around us, and where are we, and what sort of value can we create. Maybe we are selling some product or some unique thing offering. How can we leverage and how can we use the platform that is currently being created around us, use that to deliver the value that we deliver, right? So that's sort of like, I think fundamentally being curious and, being observing things and, interpreting the world is going to be the key for leaders to accomplish that.
It's kind of like that idea of genius, right? Genius isn't just knowing everything, right? Anyone can read books and know a lot. Genius is about making the connections that no one else sees.
Exactly.
And I think
right.
that's kind of what you're talking about here is you have to look for the connections that haven't been made yet.
100%. Yeah. And it's sort of like, it's a lot of reflection, a lot of, I think Steve Jobs is a good example of it, right? Looking back, how he connected the dots on where, if we talked about the MacBook or, Mac OS, he sort of combined design with innovation. So, technological innovation was happening around him. The PC market was coming in. How can we bring in that aspect of design? Like he'd open up Steve Wozniak's computer and then he'd be like, why does this board look so ugly or whatever? What do you mean? I pieced it together. It works.
Yeah.
Like not only did he want it to work, but he also wanted it to make sure it looked good from a design standpoint.
And to go back to that jobs to be done theory, right? Yeah. He understood the customer. He understood that the technology, the product was only a quarter of the equation. The rest of it was understanding what that person on the other side of it needed.
That's right.
Fitting the solution into a form factor that they could easily use and that 100%. Solved their problem and met their needs.
Yeah. 100%. And I also think like a little bit of bringing in your own interpretation matters a lot. I think that was Steve Jobs' originality in terms of bringing in that design. I mean, I don't know if he kind of did some experiments on, hey, is this design going to work or not? He just felt like he had a hunch, that good design is going to work. And then it did when people started buying it, that he kind of capitalized on that, right? And that's sort of like observing the market, how it's receiving, how you put out your interpretations and making adjustments.
Well, and to some extent also being able to make decisions in ambiguous situations. I think Steve 100%. Jobs was really good at that. He knew what information was important and he didn't spend time looking for information he didn't need to make the decision.
That's right.
So I know, David, we're getting close to the wrap-up point. I did want to call out, you run a Denver AI Meetup group that seems to be fairly large and popular. You want to tell us all a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Well, at the latest, innovation that we are all part of, whether we like it or not, is AI. And I started the Denver AI Meetup group as a way for folks to learn together. And it actually has exploded. Now we're close to 700 members. So if you go to meetup.com/Denver AI, you will find us if you are in Denver. Now, if you're not in Denver, my suggestion is you should subscribe to the Get in the Mode YouTube channel, because we post all our talks that we have on Denver AI in that channel. So you can stay tuned even if you're not in Denver. Hopefully you'll get to visit Denver, especially ski time is this time of the year.
Oh, yeah.
So if you do visit, you should definitely check us out. But if not, you can always stay tuned by subscribing to the Get in the Mode YouTube channel.
Awesome. Yeah, you put skis on my feet and bad things happen. But if I ever make it to Denver, I will try and check out the group.
Definitely.
Now, lastly, before we truly wrap up, what's the best way for people to to get in touch with you, collaborate with you, work with you?
Yeah, best way to get in touch with me is connect with me on LinkedIn. My first name, David, last name, Jitendranath. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but it is Jitendranath. And, connect with me there. Say how you got to know me. Mention this podcast. That way, I know you listen to me and you are connecting. Because these days you have a lot of bots. I don't want to connect to a bot. Connect with me and then subscribe to my LinkedIn newsletter. I post once a week or once every 2 weeks a blog. So I write a lot about different various things, not just technology and AI. I mean, right? You'll see it. When you see it, you'll see the type of topics I've written about. So subscribe to my newsletter on LinkedIn.
This has been fantastic, David. For everyone else who's been watching all the way till the end, I want to say thank you. I really appreciate it. And I would love it if you'd left a rating or review on whatever platform you're listening from. And if you know anyone who's diving into this concept of breakthrough innovation or looking to find better ways to innovate within their organization, share this episode with them, introduce David to them, and share the value. Lastly, remember, take one actionable insight from today, apply it, and let us know how it goes, because we'd love to hear about your progress. A lot of this is about continuous improvement. And David, thank you so much for being here. Everyone who listens, thank you for listening, and we'll see you all next time on Breakthrough Innovation.
Hey, JL, thank you for having me.